There seems to be a growing abuse of the state's Public Records Act, which is helping some people profit at the expense of local governments and taxpayers. Can you tell viewers about this law?
Yes, the purpose of it is transparency in government, to open government up to its citizens so they can obtain information of how their government works. That's the reason behind the Public Records Law. And but if there's a problem, it sets forth some pretty quick time periods. You got to respond like in 5 days once you get that request. And then if you fail and don't do it timely, then you get assessed a pretty big penalty starting on a per day basis, like $100 a day. So there's some real problems with it if you don't comply.
What kind of abuse is taking place?
People from, for example, out of state, they may be commercial reasons that they want to just get an easy way to build their databases out there, and so they require all this inexpensive information for free. It's very inexpensive. But there's also abusers, what I call true abusers, who are after the government and want to bring the government to its knees. And remember, this can affect schools and hospitals and port districts, small cities, big cities, counties. Any government entity is subject to public records requests. And so some of them I think are a little bit innocent, like some people want surveys or school or research papers, but it creates a lot of work and a lot of expense for those local governmental entities.
What kind of examples would you give on the abuse that's happening?
Almost every entity in the state of Washington has now been hit with public requests. Most of them very legitimate. Those are not our concern. Our concern are the true abusers, or the ones that are seeking revenge of some type against that local entity. And so one of the first ones was the little town of Mesa, which is near my district. And the former mayor, who was disgruntled, put in a whole bunch of record requests. The little tiny town didn't respond quickly enough. They may not have even had an employee, full-time staff. And in the end, she sued and won over $200,000 against this little city, basically bankrupted the town. In Prosser, there was an avenger who wanted to bankrupt the city. Just put in a lot of requests, even though they really didn't make sense. That's the problem. There's nobody to control whether it's a legitimate request or an illegitimate request. The little town of Palouse was hit with requests from somebody who said, I'm just doing it for pure pleasure. And then one of the worst ones now is the little city of Kingston. They claim they're putting about 86% of their FTEs, or their workers, just responding to records requests.
What can be done to stop this abuse?
Well, we need to change the law, and we need to attempt to address what are legitimate requests and which are not, and that's not an easy thing to do. The newspapers, unfortunately, are very much opposed to much reformation of this law. They like it because they want to be able to get anything they want at any time, even if it's a fishing expedition to go searching, behind the scenes of every entity. And some of that's okay. The newspapers aren't the problem. But the problem is that we got some of these abusers who may put in a request, like recently happened in King County, that they want all the records all the way back in history. It's been estimated it could take over 25 years just to answer that request. That's a true abuse. So my response to the newspapers is, you should cooperate with us so that we can help reform this law, because you may get stuck behind one of those record requests and you may have to wait 40 years to get your request.
So you're a co-sponsor of a bill intended to reduce the abuse of public records requests. Tell us about that legislation.
It's a 4-part bill, and it's been worked pretty hard already this session, and trying to define it and refine it and make it work. But one of the parts to it was just actually charge a minimum charge for people asking for a request to help defray some of the costs of the people, the employees trying to answer all these things. But there was a lot of pushback to that, and that was actually recently removed. And so now we just have the parts of the bill that would set up a commission, for example, 5-person commission, just to handle disputes and push it on to mediation. So at least there's a pathway to resolve these at least big requests that where it's not easy to respond. We need to come up with some solution there.
The newspapers have hinted it may actually stop legitimate public records requests. Is that true?
Not at all. It just should work the opposite. This bill should help the legitimate requesters because we want to expedite their time and the time period in order to get the answers to their requests. But if they have to sit in line behind a requester that is just there for revenge or just to abuse the system, it ties up the entire Public Records Act process, and that is damaging actually to every taxpayer in this state. We are actually, every one of us are paying the bill for this, and we need to correct it.
How can people find out more information about this or other legislative issues?
Well, they can certainly call their legislators. That's what I would ask. In fact, if they have a relationship with their local media or newspaper, I would ask that they call them and say, you should help us fix this. And the free hotline, toll-free hotline is 1-800-562-6000. Certainly you can contact me at my website or email, and I encourage people to do that.